3, 2, 1, go. All right, welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. My name is Meg and I'm part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team, and I am super excited to be hosting you and getting ready to host this amazing chat that we've got with some of the great SureScripts team. Now, before we get started, I just want to go over some quick housekeeping items. This will be really old hat for any of you who've already joined us on a session, but I'll try and run through it quickly so we can get to the meat and potatoes of today's virtual event. So like all of our virtual events, today is all about you. It's about our audience members. We want to make sure that the time that you spend with Power to Fly is time well worth it. So you are more than encouraged to participate. You can turn your cameras on if you'd like and come off mute to ask questions. If you have any kind of security concerns or privacy concerns, if you do come off mute for whatever reason, your camera or your avatar, display name, whatever else you have showing right now, that is what will show up on the live recording. So if you want to participate, but you don't want to worry about privacy, that's okay. You can still participate by typing any questions, comments, anything you'd like to share into the Zoom group chat. If you want to be in serious deep cover and don't want anyone to know you're here, that's okay too. All you have to do is DM me your questions. So instead of sending them in the Zoom chat to everyone, you'll click that little drop down and pick my name, Meg Power to Fly, and DM them to me. I will raise your questions and make sure that you are kept anonymous. Like I said, this is being recorded. So as we go on today's session, we are live streaming to our website, and we will also be posting this on our YouTube channel as well as our website later on. So if you, don't feel like you have to take notes or, like if you missed something, you have to go back, because you can always go back and rewatch this recording later on. So everybody that registered for today's session, whether you spend 5 minutes with us or the full 60, or if you registered but couldn't make it for whatever reason, you can always watch this in the future. Hi, future viewers. So you'll get an email in about 1 to 2 business days that'll have a link to where you can rewatch this recording. It'll take you to our website where you can view it there. Now, if you hear something absolutely amazing from Sue or Nora today and you just cannot resist, you have to share with somebody right away. You don't have to wait the 1 to 2 days. No worries. You can head on over to our YouTube channel. We are at Power to Fly on YouTube, and you'll be able to see the recording there, usually within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of today's session. Like I said, you can always share those recordings, and even whether you view them on our YouTube channel or on our website, they're always free to watch, and you can share them with as many people as you'd like. Let's see what else. Oh, so if you do head over to our YouTube channel, I greatly encourage you to subscribe there. It's a great way to make sure that you don't miss out on some of these amazing chats that we host. We also put content there from our mini summits and our mega summits. So in case you want to come to one of those big events, but you don't have the full day or you can't make the time to come to those as they're happening, you can always catch the content there, as well as on our website and our video archive. Let's see, you can also keep up with us on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Power to Fly on all of those different platforms, and you're more than welcome to take pictures or video as we go today, and shout out, share the love, and let people know that you are learning with Power to Fly today. Yeah, so let's jump in to our first set of introductions. So to introduce you to the members of the SureScripts team, we're going to start with Nora. So Nora has had a career in retail management and then found her passion in human resources. She's worked in organizations that span the globe and ones that barely reach outside of their home state, organizations of 125,000 plus employees to organizations under 1,000. Across them all, she's seen a common theme where people, especially women, try to succeed at work and at home, and there's a struggle that ensues because of that. She has heard time and again from people who believe that growth equals promotion, but she's obviously here to talk to us today about why that might not actually be true. So welcome, Nora.
Thank you.
We are also graced by the presence of Sue Lawrence. Sue has over 20 plus years of experience in human resources and learned that development happens in many different ways. You simply need to recognize the opportunities for it. Sue has worked in several industries, including financial, medical device, and healthcare technology. No matter what industry she's in, she asks the same question: does development only mean moving up the ladder? She's going to share her personal development experiences with us and thoughts about the ways you can navigate your own growth and development. So welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Now, before we continue, I just realized I never flipped the screen to Sue. I'm so sorry. Here's Sue's lovely slide. So sorry, ladies. So before we jump into the questions today, I do just want to call attention to the fact that obviously these wonderful women are here from the SureScripts team to join us today. And one of the biggest reasons for that is that SureScripts is hiring. So I'm going to throw a link into the Zoom chat here in just a moment to where you can check out this company page, SureScripts company page on powertofly.com. Now, from here, you can learn a couple different things. You can click on the company info to learn more about them as a company. Clicking the events tab is going to show you both past events that they've participated in, as well as events like today, things like our upcoming virtual job fairs, if they've been on any panels for our summits, that kind of thing. Then you can also click on the open jobs tab. That is going to lead you to some of their open roles. Now, if you learn more about SureScripts today and you just really want to work with the SureScripts team, but don't maybe really see any roles right now that apply to you, one of the things that I absolutely recommend is that when you get to this page, at the upper right-hand corner, there's going to be a big pink follow button. Make sure that you click that. What it does is it puts you on their follow network. The SureScripts HR team can see that at any time. And it indicates to SureScripts that you have an interest in working with them, that you are an active seeker, even if you don't find anything that you would like to apply to right now. The other thing that it does for you is that it will alert you when they post new roles. As well as, if they have any kind of changes to their company info, maybe they change their hiring practices, that kind of thing. And it's also going to, again, flag to the SureScripts team that you are very interested in working with them. So it's a really great tool to use. And it doesn't have to just be whether you're an active seeker or not. It can also be a really great way, like we said, to stay abreast of the open roles without feeling like you have to keep kind of coming back to job boards that seemingly never change until all of a sudden they're different. So definitely take advantage of that. Like I said, I'll throw the link up here into the Zoom chat in just a moment. Now, before we get into last thing before we jump into the questions today, we're going to talk about, these are some of the principal themes that we're going to try and get through on today's session. So we're going to touch base a little bit about an HR perspective on why organizations need and benefit from people who aren't seeking to advance up the career ladder. We're also going to talk about some ideas for how you can grow in place regardless of your longer term ambitions, as well as tips for talking to your boss about what you want, because people don't know what you want or where you're trying to go if you don't tell them. So like I said, we're going to try and cover, our discussions and our questions today are going to cover these themes. But we obviously, kind of identified those themes after looking at the questions that y'all pre-submitted before today's session. So what we've done is we've compiled all those, we've removed redundant ones, and we've tried to arrange them into kind of a conversational format. Now, whether you think your question is going to get asked or not, if you are taking the time to be with us here live today, then we want to give you priority. So if you have a question and you want to make sure that it gets answered, please feel free to, like I said, come off mute and ask. You can also put your question or comment into the Zoom tab or into the Zoom chat, or you can DM me directly. The other thing that I highly encourage is, if you have a question that just comes up today or you want more details on, something that one of the speakers is saying, please feel free to do that. If we ask one of your questions and you want to ask a follow-up or give us some more context based on what else the many different ways that some of these questions can be interpreted, please feel free to do that as well. The one thing I will kind of caution everybody, because you can still probably hear it in my background, make sure that unless you are actively speaking, you remain on mute. You'll see me doing this a lot during today's session, just so that I can make sure that my background noise isn't interfering with everybody else being able to hear what Nora and Sue have to say. So just please be aware of that. And if you do want to come off mute to ask a question or add comments or whatever, that's great. Just make sure that you're not speaking over one of our speakers or interrupting another attendee. I get paid to fill the space with talk, so please feel free to interrupt me if you would like to ask a question. All right, so without further ado, we will jump into today's first question here. So one of the first questions that we got, I was really kind of intrigued by this. This person had asked, how do you overcome the stigma in your own mind that not going up the ladder does not equal failure?
Yeah, so honestly, this may be the most important question I think we talk about today in a lot of respects, because our own perspective and mindset about what we're doing is sometimes our biggest limiter. I think universally have this idea that we want to strive for work-life balance. And I think most of us would also say there's no such thing, that it doesn't exist. Part of the reason we feel that way is because it's all about trade-offs, and it's really hard to make those trade-offs and to give ourselves permission to do what we need to do for us, right? So the decision that you're at this time, whether this is a long-term decision or a near-term decision for you, that you're going to focus on growth in place rather than climbing the ladder, is a choice. And it's a choice you should be making based on your personal priorities and what's going on for you right now. And that can be really hard to do and not worry about, well, what do other people think? Or, that I'm supposed to always succeed. But you can't succeed at everything all the time, right? We're not Wonder Woman, no matter how much we want to be. We can't do it all. And so it's about making those choices to say, what's really important to me right now is contributing really well where I am, growing as I can, but maybe not taking on more because I have tiny children at home, or I have an ailing parent, or whatever your circumstance may be. And there's a whole range. So I think it's a great question, and you have to decide for yourself that it's not failure, but I'm here to tell you that we don't see it that way.
I think that paradigm shift is really hard for a lot of people because that's what we're fed pretty much all the time. Like from the time you start thinking about, the future and career and employment and stuff, that's kind of what we're all told, right? That, you get a job and you start entry level and you just keep climbing because that's how you grow a career. And to a certain extent, yeah, that's how it's done, but that doesn't mean it's how everybody has to do it. And I love how you said kind of have to decide what your priorities are, because, priorities, like the kind of the driving force of your life, or what's really important to you, can seem really hard to define. But I feel like when you kind of narrow your focus into like, well, what's important to me now? What's important to me now, this year, and maybe the next 5 years, if you can look ahead that far. Because that, for me at least, that freed me up to think about, well, what's important to me now? What's likely to be important to me over the next like 12 to 14 months? And then it felt like a lot less pressure to be like, well, but what's important to me? You can't really tell what directions your life is going to take. I mean, pandemic is a prime example of that. But yeah, I love how you kind of specified that, like, maybe it's about being home for your kids now because they're little and there's a lot of things to learn and grow and you want to be there for those things. But maybe you don't have kids, and so what's important to you right now is amassing that knowledge base and trying to make sure that you are learning and growing and kind of doing what you can in your current role. So thank you for that, Nora. All right, so to follow up that question, another person had asked, can you share your strategies for growing in your current position? So a lot of this, this can seem, I feel like this is a really recurring question because a lot of people, either their company doesn't really have like kind of the room for upward mobility, or maybe they're just part of a very large organization and kind of moving up quickly is not a thing that happens there. So what would you suggest to these people that are trying to grow in that current position they hold?
So I will say that at SureScripts, we spend time talking to people about their individual development plans. And actually, Sue helped create a training program that we're offering right now for both employees and managers on developing your own individual development plan. And this really connects to this idea because part of it is about figuring out what you want and what you're interested in, and then how you can find opportunities to enhance your skills in those areas. So that can be, for me, I've been in my position almost 7 years. I have been in HR for far longer than that. We don't need to get into specifics. But, I have been in this role, but it's never gotten boring. It's never stale. And part of that is because I've tried out all sorts of different things. So a few years ago, I realized I really had a passion and interest for learning and development. So I talked to my boss about it. I expressed that. And we found ways together for me to take more of a role in that space within our team. A counterpoint to that is I was our internal leader for 4 years, 5 years on our performance management process. There's always someone in HR who owns that. I got kind of burnt out. I'm going to be honest, like it stopped being fun for me. Well, you can have that conversation, and we did. And actually, Sue is now the proud owner of our performance management process. So, part of it is about figuring those things out and owning them, and then having those conversations with your boss or your team or both to say, hey, how can we switch things up to keep it interesting and challenging, even though I'm not changing jobs? But the first step is really that key thing of sitting back and thinking about, what am I interested in? What lights me up, right? And how do I offer that interest to my employer?
I think that's a really good point, and if you haven't found what lights you up yet, this is a really good opportunity to kind of stretch a little bit and, talk to your supervisor about it. Say, hey, I don't think I really have a niche just yet. Is there, a way that I can get in on some other projects that are going to, kind of stretch my skill set and help me kind of learn more about the organization in a global fashion. There's a lot of different directions you could take this, and they don't necessarily require that you already know what you want to do, which I think can feel very like, I didn't really find something that I was passionate about until I was like 32. And that was kind of scary because like a bunch of my other friends had like found stuff that they were either crushing it or they were like learning all that they could and they really loved it. And it's not that I didn't love my jobs, but like nothing that was like, yes, I'm passionate about this. And then I found Powerfly and realized that like a company with an LGBTQ and equality and inclusive focus is definitely something that I wanted to support and be a part of. So don't worry if you don't know just yet. The solutions and the suggestions that Nora is giving can absolutely apply to those. All right, so Sue, to move over to you for a minute, another person had asked about transferable skills. So when we're talking about this horizontal growth, what role do those transferable skills play in that?
Many skills are transferable. Let's just be really clear about that, especially when we move into lateral roles. And that's what we're talking about, right? Either growing in place or moving laterally versus up the ladder. And transferable skills are exactly that. They're transferable. What I would say is to take it a step further and identify the ways in which your skills could be applied to that next role that you have your sights set on. So be really intentional about mapping your current skills to that next position. That's an important step. So my co-presenter, Nora, created a really cool tool here at SureScripts. It's called Career Maps. And at the core, what it is, it's a tool that compares competencies across jobs, and it shows roles that are related to one another based on competencies, which spill into skill sets a bit too. And it shows possible paths. And again, we're talking across the organization. It could be a promotional path. It could be a lateral path. It could also be a step back because we're not going to talk about that today, but that's also a very viable path for some people. I know personally, I've done it twice, and it's been an intentional, thoughtful decision, but it has worked out. What I like about the career mapping tool and about the conversations that we have here at SureScripts about skills and people transferring is that we recognize lateral moves are expected. We need people to move laterally. We invest time, talking to people about lateral moves. We're not perfect at it yet. We're continuing to work on it. But job movement is something that we even track, and we have metrics, people goals associated with job moves, again, both promotionally and laterally. And we exceeded slightly our target metric on this topic last year. And I think we're well on our way of exceeding it again this year.
That's so cool. I love that idea of having like a map that because it kind of sounds like a more focused and probably a little bit more specific version of some of those like career questionnaires that you take in high school, right? About like where you might fit, or what your personality suggests. And I love that idea that it's something that's kind of built into the framework of SureScripts, because you're right, it gives it automatically encourages a lot of that freedom for people to maybe move around within the organization, because a lot of times you just feel really siloed. You start off in one specific role or one specific department, and it just, it might feel very limiting in that way. So I absolutely love it.
The one thing I would add, and it's part of the IDP, the individual development plan training that we put on for our leaders. We talk to our leaders a great deal about them being an importer and an exporter of our talent, and how important it is for them to, be open to other employees from outside of their department, outside of their function, to come into their area. And again, for them to also support employees who want to move out into a different department or function. That's key. So we find really if employees and leaders are invested in the same thing, it's paying off.
Yeah. We have a question that just came in on the Zoom chat. This person wants to know, they want to ask you, Sue, when you've taken intentional steps back in your career, did you have a clear idea of where you wanted to go from there? This person says, I've taken a non-management position and am now looking to go back to management because I miss it so much.
So thank you for asking the question. I've done it twice. And the first time I did it intentionally. I knew I wanted to become more of an HR generalist, and I hadn't really done a lot of recruiting. So I took a position in recruiting. So that was thoughtful. The other time, I wish I could tell you that I had a really clear plan as to why. It was based on the situation, a family situation. So I didn't necessarily know exactly, what I was going to gain. I just knew that my priorities at that time changed. And I was lucky enough to be in a department with an extremely supportive leader who gave me that opportunity to shift gears a little bit. And then that lasted for about 1.5 years, 2 years. And then I was able to move forward again.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I've been in a similar position this past year, where I moved from a full-time role with Power to Fly back into like a freelance position, so I could handle some personal stuff. And having that support was absolutely invaluable. But it also wouldn't, like, that support would not have been there if I hadn't been able to communicate with my supervisor and my team lead about it. So I think you're right, like having that open, just like communication between your team members and your supervisors and all that kind of stuff is so crucial. Not only for the company to benefit from all of this and to support you, but also for your own internal benefit and development.
Well, and I had a colleague recently tell me a story of her own history, and she shared that when her daughter was really young, she'd gotten to a point, she was leading a large team, and she had been really successful and was really, sort of well regarded by her leadership, but she was just overwhelmed, right? It was just all too much. And she really felt like, I can't do all this. And so she literally went into her boss's office and quit, because she figured like that was the option, right? Stepping back or asking for a different role. It didn't even occur to her that that was a thing. And so she went in and resigned. Luckily, her boss was more on top of this stuff than she was, and had a conversation, and they worked things out. And, she stepped away from management, focused on an individual contributor role that she felt like she could be successful in, got through that period in her life. Well, that person is now the chief marketing officer. So like, clearly it did not derail her career, right? And I think that there's something really beautiful in that even though she didn't know that option was there, right? She's proof that you can take those steps back and still find success.
No, I think that's absolutely valid, and a totally, like, your friend's approach makes a lot of sense, because you're right. For a very, for most of us, the idea, and I don't know if it's a uniquely American idea or not, but like, it's advance, advance, advance. It's not retreat. It's not step aside. It's not take a breather. It's advance. And so I feel like you're right. Like it feels like all or nothing. It feels like, well, if I'm not going forward and I'm not, that you're only of value to the company when you're going forward. And if you need some support or you need some more time or whatever, that you're not of value anymore. And so better to leave before they ask me to leave. And it's really helpful to hear other examples of that not necessarily being the case. You might not work at a place that's, as supportive as you want it to be, but you're not going to know that until you ask for the support. We have another question. Actually, I'm going to bring it up here in a little while. So we're having some really great questions come up in the chat thread. So don't feel discouraged if you're sending your questions in. I'm going to try and get to all of them. So as we move on from that question, hold on, got to wake up my mouse again. This next question, I believe, is directed at Sue. This person says, I have 2 children and I really value my life outside of work, but I feel the constant need to climb the ladder. How can I explain to my employers that I value and appreciate my job, but I don't want to take any more responsibilities on? This can feel like a difficult conversation to have, right? Because you don't want to be not a team player. You don't want to be pulling, you don't want to feel like you're not pulling your weight with the rest of the team. How would you suggest somebody approach this?
Yeah, excuse me. And I think many of us can relate to this, right? Before you let your manager know that you aren't looking for more responsibility, my advice would be to pause. Pause and ask yourself why you're feeling the pressure to climb the ladder. And Nora and I had talked about that. Is it internal pressure? Internal being you're putting pressure on yourself? Is it pressure that you're getting from your leader? Are you feeling pressure from your peers? Once you identify where the pressure is coming from, you'll know how to deal with it a bit more effectively. And if it's self-imposed pressure, I'll go back to something that was said earlier on. Revisit your priorities, revisit your motivations, and get grounded in those, because maybe you'll find peace then in why you're not looking to climb the corporate ladder. A theme so far, and it will continue, I promise, today is all about having open, honest conversations with your leader. And a trusting work environment is key. At SureScripts, we really strive to create those sorts of, trusting, safe environments where employees feel comfortable and safe to have honest conversations. And I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. In fact, in our last full employee survey, 86% of our employees, and we had, it was maybe 94% response rate out of the entire organization. So high response rate. 86% of our employees said that they felt supported by their manager. So that creates a really strong foundation to have the open, honest conversation. And I don't know, where everyone is coming from a culture standpoint, but it really does start with having the open dialogue with your leader. And I guess I would also ask you to think about this and maybe find some peace in this. Not everyone wants to climb the ladder, and that is A-okay. Organizations don't expect everyone to want to climb the ladder, and let's face it, organizations wouldn't be able to support, that volume of movement, right? I mean, I don't care how big the company is, they just don't have probably as many opportunities if 100% of the employees wanted to climb the ladder. And one more thing that I would offer up is when you say that you're not interested in taking on more responsibility, I think every one of us can always and should always be open to improving how we're doing our current job. Maybe you can build on your cross-functional relationships. Maybe you can, continue taking good things to great. So don't just think about responsibility in that linear fashion. Think about your current role and what more could you do in the how you are approaching your position.
Yeah, I think that's key too. Like, you know, you maintain that open communication, and sometimes it's just about the way you word things, right? You know, if instead of saying like, I don't want any more responsibilities, you can say, hey, I have a lot going on in this other area of my life, and I want to make sure that I'm still, you know, still contributing and that I am still pulling my weight with the team, but I also want to make sure that I'm doing my current responsibilities well and not adding to the list so that I, you know, my quality overall goes down. And it can be just as, you know, just as simple as that, and highlight that you want to make sure that you stay up to, you know, maybe what you consider your caliber of work or your caliber of success. We had another question that came along that kind of dovetails nicely with this, and it's talking about that lack of ambition, right? So if you're trying to have that open communication with your team, that you want to be a solid contributor but not climb that ladder, is there a way to convey that without either giving an undertone of a lack of ambition or giving that impression to people?
I'll take this one. So you have to listen to me one more time. I saw this question, and it is somewhat related to the previous question. And you know, it's all around effective ways to communicate, right? And it dawned on me that a really important aspect of effective communication is listening. And so what I mean by that is listen to what your company is saying they value in employees and leverage that information. So chances are you'll hear your leader say things such as, you know, they value people who are delivering results, collaborating effectively with others, adaptable. You know, the list goes on and on and on. So by having that information and by understanding what your company values, you'll be in a great position to talk to your leader about what you bring to the table. You'll be able to reinforce, you know, your skill set, your competencies, your experience, and reinforce at that same time that you are going to continue to strive to be a rock star contributor in your current role. Clearly communicate your ambitions. And again, it does not have to be climbing up the ladder. Ambition by definition is having a strong desire to do or achieve something. I didn't hear anything in that definition that talked about upward mobility, right? It's in your seat doing things that you are set out to achieve, and reflect on the work that you do today and figure out where, you know, what your ambition is for your current position, if that's what you want to do. And let's not be fooled. Ambition is needed in every role across every organization. It's not just for that next job, then I'll get ambition. No, you need it now.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so we have some questions that kind of revolve around that climbing the professional ladder, obviously, since that's the nature of this talk. But I want to jump over to Nora for a moment. This person had asked, how can you grow professionally without climbing the ladder and still be financially rewarded in proportion to the effort that you invest in the results you achieve? I feel like this is probably, again, I don't think it's uniquely American, but it's definitely the idea that, like, if you want to earn more money, you have to keep advancing up the ladder. So how would you address this question?
So it's not untrue that if you want substantial growth in your compensation, moving up the ladder is going to be the most direct way to get it. What I would say is that, again, we go back to this conversation around priorities. So what are your priorities? If you work for a good, ethical, you know, well-meaning company that takes care of its employees, they're going to pay you appropriately for the job that you're doing, right? They're going to pay you competitively. If they're not, that's a whole other issue, right? That we could have a whole other session on that issue. But assuming that they're paying you competitively for the job that you're in, it's really all about just continuing to accept that that's the pay rate for the work you're doing, right? If you want a 20% increase, I'm not going to lie to you, you're not going to get that staying in place. It's just not, it's not realistic.
No, that's a really good point. I keep an idea around what you're hoping to gain, as well as what's realistic, like what's realistic for that position, that department, or what's realistic for your area. Some places like, if you are in tech and you live out in California, there's a lot of places where you can kind of jump around and, move to different jobs. The one thing that I do think has been overall a pretty good benefit of this pandemic is that a lot of companies that did not think that remote work was possible for them are learning that it is, which widens the career opportunities for basically everyone. You don't have to live in one of those hotspots. But yeah, I think that's a good point. Think about what you actually want, what you're looking for, and what's reasonable, and then talk to your employer about it. If you don't feel like you're being adequately compensated, then you can have that conversation and say, here's what I'm bringing to the table. Here's what the work that I've done consistently. Here's the things that I've achieved for y'all. I think that we need to reevaluate compensation there.
Mhm.
All right, so let's say that we have a couple questions coming in the chat that I want to make sure we get to. One person had talked about if you're trying to move around or move up or move sideways, and it leads you into an interview for a new position. This person has been interviewing for jobs, and when they ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years, it seems like the correct answer that they want to hear is about mastering your role that they're hiring you for, and then they want you to say that you want to keep moving up the ladder. Is there any way to convey to, maybe not a current employer, but a potential future employer, that you're a hard worker, but not necessarily hugely ambitious? This person says that they've been in upper management and don't want to manage people. They just want to be a worker bee. And we all know that, as we talked about earlier, that's definitely something that companies need. So is there a way that you would suggest somebody address this outside of a traditional employment role and address it earlier on in an interview setting?
Let me start. Nora, I'll take a crack at
we're
this.
both like,
You chime in. I go back to be clear that ambition doesn't necessarily mean that next position. And so when you're interviewing, be really clear with them about what you're passionate about, what you are going to bring to the table, how you want to add value, and that right now you're motivated, to get in, learn the job, do the best that you can. I don't know you also need to think about, is it the type of company that you could see yourself at long term? That may or may not be easy to answer. But I don't think that you need to have a textbook response, for a conversation like that, for an interview like that. I think you just enter into the conversation honest. And if you're not sure exactly where your path is going to lead you in 3 to 5 years, you be really clear what you want to do in the short term, and what your goals are in achieving, again, some of those competencies that you're going to be able to build while you're in that role.
Yeah, I would say, and we actually have a couple members of our recruiting team on the call. I don't know if they want to chime in here, but for me, the most important thing that you can do in an interview is be authentic, right? Don't tell them the answer you think they want to hear. Tell them your real answer, in part because most recruiters will know if you're BSing them, right? They'll pick up on it, and then they'll be like, well, why is she not being honest? But also, interviewing is a two-way process. And if you're interviewing for a job where they're really looking for someone who's going to be the manager of the department in 2 years, and you've managed people before, and you don't want to do that again, because it's not for everyone, people. It's not, right? You're way better off being honest about that and finding the job that is the right fit, instead of feeling like, well, I should get this one now. It's here, but they want me to do this thing I don't really want to do. But, I just don't think that's ultimately going to give you the career that you want.
Yeah, I think that's I love that idea of being, being a lot more, kind of transparent and honest in those kinds of situations, mostly so you don't find yourself in, 3, 5, 8 weeks realizing like, oh, this isn't really a great spot for me. Because once somebody lands in for a new job, the last thing you want to do is start looking for another job, right? It's not fun. There's a reason that's not, there's no like competitive sport based around it, right? Because it's just not a great time for most people. So yeah, I think you're right. Having that transparent conversation early and being honest about what you're actually looking for. Because I mean, it might not lead to the job that you're interviewing for, but it also might lead to a different role within that same organization. The person that's hiring you, it does not always have blinders on to whatever else is going on at that company. So your answer may be changing, if it's not really what you think is what they want to hear, but it's honest, could also lead you to a different role. Amanda's in the chat saying that there's so much to be said for the resident SME on a team who doesn't manage anyone, but has so much knowledge and is willing to share that knowledge with others. Amassing that knowledge is great, but if you can do it without becoming that gatekeeper kind of person, that's invaluable. It really is.
Hey, Meg, I'm a recruiter here. I'm Shannon Clark, and I have a point of view to share as well. I think that it's important to, just show up in a positive way in an interview. And if you are really interested in that opportunity, you're there to talk about you and, obviously learn about the company, but you can kind of show them what you want by just having that interview. And then the way you phrase things, they're going to pick up like, oh, okay, this person really likes being an individual contributor. You could say all the things you've been able to accomplish as an individual contributor. And so you're kind of like laying it out there for them without necessarily having to be super direct. And if you want to be super direct, if it's a situation like Nora mentioned, then yeah, go ahead and say like that might not be something that I'm interested in, but I can tell you I would be a rock star for you in an individual contributor role. So I think it's a combination of the way you frame it and being positive and then also being honest.
That's a great point, Shannon. And I would actually throw in on that you may think you know why they're asking, and the truth may be the opposite. There are times where employers are trying to suss out if you really want the manager job and if you're going to like expect to be promoted in 6 months when they know that's not going to happen in their company. And they want people who are going to come in for the job they're interviewing for because that's what they want. Right? Not to say they can never move up, but so that they don't have someone coming in who then is dissatisfied with what they just signed up for because they really wanted more.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Before we leave this idea or like the subject of kind of the interview process, LaRonda had asked a question about what your resume says to that company. So they want to know, doesn't it look bad on a resume not to have a history of moving up the ladder?
So I started to respond to this in chat, so I'll take it and then I'll toss it over to Sue. And actually, Shan, you may want to chime in on this too, given that you look at resumes all day long. So what I said in the chat is it's about the story that you tell. And what I mean by that is if you're not moving up and you don't have those bullets of the things you've accomplished in that role to show off the different contributions that you made, then yeah, it probably doesn't look great. But if you have projects that you've led, initiatives that you've been involved in, if you can demonstrate through your bullets all kinds of ways you've contributed, that's as valuable. Again, we've said companies, not everybody can move up, right? Like we need some people who want to be that SME, who want to stay on a team in a role. And so I think if you're reflecting those other experiences you've had in your resume, then not having, the sort of ladder climbing picture is okay. Shan, do you want to, or Sue?
I would add that your resume can also show progress, right? And not progress in the upward mobility, but progress in how you've grown in your role. Let's not forget that how you work is just as important as the job title, as moving up. If you are in a position and you have brought continuous improvement to a role, but your title didn't change, that's an important part of your story. If you created, cross-functional relationships on a project team, that's an important part of your story. So I would say sit back and really think hard about the progress that you have made across your entire career from that lens. And I'm not sure if Shannon, do you
Sure.
have? Okay.
Sure. I like to see a summary on resumes on occasion, and you could take that space to, really talk up the things that you've done, in a general way at the top, and then also even that you are now ready to take that next step. So you're basically telling the recruiter, like, I didn't just sit here because I felt like it. I was happy and now I'm ready. So look at me. And that way you're kind of already telling them before waiting to see if they'll actually call you or email you. You're just kind of getting ahead of it. So I would give you that tip.
All right. So we only have about 15, well, actually a little bit less than 15 minutes left in today's session. These always go very quickly. So I'm going to try and make sure we get to everybody's questions from the chat, and then we'll keep plugging away at the pre-asked questions as well. So this person had asked, you're saying that companies benefit from employees that don't desire to move up, but how does that actually work? From an employee perspective, I feel that colleagues who get more benefits are those who actually keep upwardly, leveling up. What do you believe are the benefits for those employees that grow where they are?
So this kind of relates, there's a line in here that, or a piece of that question that makes me pause, which is this idea of colleagues who get more benefits are the ones who move up. So if that connotes money, right? If that's about compensation, we sort of touched on that piece already, but the reality is for a company, every company is shaped like a pyramid, right? There's only one CEO. There's only, whatever your company has, 5 to 10 executive team members, right? Whatever, it may be more if it's a giant company, but, and so the reality is companies want to retain highly talented people. They want to have those SMEs on their teams. And the truth is that person who's been around a long time, who does their job really well, who knows the ins and outs and the history and all that stuff, those people are invaluable. They're often the places where companies find themselves with single points of failure, right? Like if that guy leaves the company, we don't know what we're going to do because it's going to take 5 people to replace him, right? And it's not necessarily the volume of work, it's that whole base of knowledge that person has. So when we're looking at a company, we're looking at, we know not everybody can move up. That's going to be inherently limited. So we see benefit in having those people who either become those SMEs or even, we talked about that lateral movement before. There's real benefit from a perspective of cross collaboration or from a perspective of knowledge transfer or understanding to have someone move from department A to department B and bring their prior experience with them. I support our product organization, and we've had a number of people move from our account management team into that product team. And my product leaders see that as invaluable, right? Because they bring this whole other lens to the work in developing new products. So from the company perspective, that's a huge part of the benefit, which I think is what part of what the question was all about. Now, in terms of, right, growing your benefits, if we're talking about compensation and such, it depends. Sometimes being that SME or being that person who moves laterally and brings all that knowledge with you is also something you get paid for, right? It doesn't mean that there's no growth in terms of your income. But as I said before, you shouldn't expect, monumental pay increases if you're staying around the same sort of scope and scale of work volume.
Well, I think it's also important, you touched on this a little bit earlier, but compensation is not just money, right? It can also include, flexibility of work hours, or being able to work from home or work a hybrid schedule. If you've got like a gnarly commute that you're dealing with, or if you've got kids that need to be taken to soccer practice, like there's a lot of different things that can be, kind of wrapped up in that compensation plan as a whole. So you're right, if a 20% increase in your salary from year to year is what you're seeking, then no, probably you're not likely to get that pretty much anywhere, but you might be able to see, you might be able to negotiate your way to something that's even more beneficial to you than the money. We have a lot of chats on this, so I'll try and dig up a couple links for anybody that's interested in this, kind of in this vein, but I'll try and share those links in the chat before we run out of time today.
Hey, Meg, I have a couple quick points. I think also just having the respect of other teammates, whether it's in your team or from another, it's not monetary, but it feels good to be needed and wanted, and being able to possibly be a mentor to others. So I think those are some benefits that you get from staying in place as well. And if you like to help people, that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next question we have is also aimed at Nora. This person says, I went back to school, so I'm not aiming for a higher ranked position, but I still want to incorporate new tasks. How can I approach this conversation with my boss? I still want to have enough time for studying as I pursue my education.
Yeah, so I think this connects back to some of what Sue shared before, in terms of, first you got to sort of look at, okay, you went back, you're in school, I assume at this point completed a few courses and are working towards something, whether that be a sort of certificate or a degree or whatever, and you feel like you've gained these new skills. I think offering those skills up, being able to say, these are the things I've learned in school, and I'd love to find a way to apply those here at work. I think offering that and not saying, and I expect to get a promotion or whatever because I'm getting a degree, is actually going to win you huge points with leaders. The fact that you're saying, I have something new to offer and I want to offer it, and I just want to offer it where I am. If you have that open dialogue Sue was talking about before, you and your manager should be able to identify ways that you can leverage those skills that you're learning. And the best way to learn is to practice, right? And so it's actually like a mutual benefit to your schooling too. If you're learning about it and then you have the chance to practice it at work, and that makes you understand it better, so then you're doing better on your school assignments potentially, like that's a really nice virtuous cycle. So I don't know a lot of managers who would be like, yeah, whatever, you learned that in school, I'm not interested in leveraging that. I mean, maybe if you're going to school to be a vet tech and your job is in customer support, right? They may not be able to figure out how to apply that across, but as long as it's something somewhat connected to your work, your manager will probably be thrilled to help you figure out how you can apply that. And it's just a matter of having that open conversation.
Yeah, totally agree here. Okay, so in the last 5 minutes, I'm gonna try to get to one more question, and then we'll go into our wrap up today. Let's see. All right, so this person has talked about how they love their current position and they don't want to move to another one, but they still want to be considered for new projects. So Sue, how would you communicate this?
So guess what I'm going to say? It starts with having an open, honest conversation with your leader. Surprise, surprise. Take the guesswork out for your leader and let your leader know, hey, you know what? I really enjoy my job. I feel confident. I'm excited about the work. I get energy from the work. And I want to leverage all of that by getting involved in some projects. And if you have a thought on a project or two, great, share it. If you don't, at least start the conversation about, expressing your interest. also think about how, and weave this into the conversation with your leader, how maybe that additional knowledge or experience will weave into and relate to the work that you're doing now. So be really clear on how you'll leverage that additional experience. I think that's important. I remember when I personally was in a situation like this, and I had a conversation with my leader. It was when I worked at a med device company, and at the time, my twin boys were 2, and I said, you know, yes, I had bags under my eyes. Yes, one day I wore 2 different shoes to work because I was not getting enough sleep. And I wasn't interested in growing my career, but I really wanted more project work. And we had a great conversation, and she gave me an opportunity to get involved in some projects that weren't going to be all consuming, but man, were they meaningful. And I walked away with some additional skills. So although you don't want to move into a new role, I encourage you to think about how you want to continue to develop, invest time up front, thinking about that. And you've heard it a couple of times already. We believe strongly in development at SureScripts. We've got leaders calling us around how can they be, best supporters of employee development. We have employees signing up for our IDP class. So really, and I'm sure Nora would agree, talk to someone in your organization, whether it's HR or a different function, about your development. It begins with you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. Okay, so in the 3 minutes that we have left, I'm going to share my screen here so we can talk a little bit more about SureScripts. So these are based on some questions that we asked Nora and Sue leading up to today's conversation. The company culture, engaged, I think probably kind of speaks for itself at this point. Would either of you or both of you like to address your favorite part about working at SureScripts?
I certainly can. I've worked in a number of different industries. I know Sue has as well. And for me, being at the intersection of technology and healthcare is just a really, really cool place to be because, tech, everybody thinks tech is cool, don't they? But knowing that we're also literally helping doctors have an easier time doing their jobs, right? And helping patients have more information about, say, the cost of their prescription medications. I mean, that's real stuff that impacts all of us. And so for me, we get to do that. We get to be in this space, making a difference in healthcare from the technology side, not directly from the provider side. But as HR business partners in that space, we get to help all different aspects of the company in terms of how we grow that and how we continue to develop our impact as an organization. So it's just a really cool space to be in.
Yeah, I would add that because of the purpose of our organization, I think it automatically attracts highly accountable and passionate people. And when you have that combination, it makes for an extremely supportive work environment and steeped in valued behaviors. We have valued behaviors that guide how we work. And it's the first company that I've worked at that actually have the valued behaviors come to life through a variety of ways.
That's so wonderful. And it's great to hear it. It also kind of echoes a lot of what I've heard from the SureScripts team over the numerous chats I've gotten a chance to host with y'all. So thank you so much for sharing that with our larger group today. I do just want to flag that there are obviously a lot of open roles at SureScripts. I see there's a link at the bottom of this slide. Unfortunately, it's not clickable for y'all right now, so I did throw it into the Zoom chat. Are there any of these roles that y'all would like to highlight, or maybe tell us, one of what you suggest as like your best tip for somebody who's interviewing?
I think that's squarely in Shannon's camp there.
Sure. So, tips for interviewing, I would say, or even getting noticed, definitely tailor your resume. When you do get a interview, know like a few things about the company. Don't take that for granted because people will not be impressed if you do not know anything. And then third, practice telling your story in a shorter and concise way so that you can really give a picture to your interviewers of what you've done in the past. So you're not just going on and on. Those are my tips. And then, yes, we have a variety of jobs open right now all across the company. In our product team, we have a couple of business analysts. They're pretty traditional business analyst roles, but they work with our product team and tech teams. Business advisors, they're a combination of product strategy and some finance. We have a variety of those open as well. Pretty cool opportunity. And then a product analyst. We have a couple of software engineer openings, quality engineer positions, and you see the rest here. A couple of customer support, and then you can read the rest of these here, but definitely a great place to work. Hopefully you got that vibe today, and we really appreciate you all attending and listening and being engaged. Keyword.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. I just want to say a huge thank you to Sue, Nora, as well as Shannon. I know that it's not just the hour that you spend with us, there's prep time that goes into these things. So just a huge thank you for spending time with us today and sharing your experience and your expertise with us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Good. Yes, that's my ultimate goal with these. I also want to say a huge thank you, echoing what Shannon had said. Thank you to everybody that participated today, the questions that were pre-submitted. I know we didn't get to all of them. I'm so sorry, but I have shared a couple of links here where you can connect with our speakers, as well as more links where you can follow up with more information about SureScripts. Please feel free to check out the links to their open jobs. I believe that leads you directly to the SureScripts page itself. You can also check out their open roles on Power2Fly as well. And I believe there's links there that I don't think we fill out an application here. I think it leads you right into SureScripts anyway. But anyway, hopefully some of y'all will be jumping back in this afternoon. We have another chat that I get to host later today starting at 3 p.m. Eastern. So please feel free to join us for that. And hopefully if you can't make it for the rest of today, y'all will join us for more upcoming virtual events in the future. Don't forget, we've got our mini summit for May happening on, I believe, the 3rd through the 6th. So definitely come back and take a look at that, as well as a virtual job fair that week. So if you're on the lookout for roles, definitely check that out. Hope that if you are leaving us for today, that you have a lovely rest of your Tuesday. And I hope to see many more of you around soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.